If you're new to watching Ag PhD, each week we have our Farm Basics segment. We started doing this almost 20 years ago because there are so many non-farmers out there in the country. In fact, if you look at how many farmers are farming 1,000 acres or more, it's only about 173,000. That's it. That's less than 0.05% of our population. It's a tiny, tiny amount. So there are a lot of non-farmers out there, and we just want to make sure that we're conveying some of the common things we do on the farm to non-farmers so they can understand just a little bit about what's going on. So today on the show, we wanted to discuss winter annual weeds. It's a weed type that is definitely a little bit more difficult to control in certain crops, and we want to explain why today.
You may have noticed at home in your lawn or your garden or in your neighborhood that there are certain weeds that really seem to thrive in the fall weather. Well, oftentimes those are winter annual weeds. They're weeds that germinate and get their start in the fall, and then they go dormant over the winter, and then in the spring they're ready to roll again. They're almost like perennial weeds in that they've got an established root system, they have some top growth already, and they take off much quicker than the seeds that you're going to put in the ground in the spring. So if you've got a spring annual weed, it's often at a big disadvantage to those winter annuals. So you think about, where would those winter annuals be a real problem for me? Well, if you're doing no tillage at all. So farmers that do tillage in the spring, if there's winter annual weeds, well, they till them right up and get rid of them. But if they're not doing tillage, those winter annuals have got a substantial root base, and they're going to be tough for that farmer to fight.
The other place where we see big problems with winter annual weeds is in winter crops. Winter wheat, for example, we seed that on our own farm, and every year we have to face certain weeds like pennycress, for example, and there are a number of other winter annual weeds that they get started about the same time the winter wheat does. And pretty often in the fall we think, oh, no big deal, you know, a lot of these weeds will die off in the spring if there are a few weeds. But sure enough, each spring we see a lot of those winter annuals that did survive the winter, and like Darren said earlier, they thrive, they're big early on, and so if you're going to spray them in the spring, it often gets problematic because the weeds are so tall and a lot of the herbicides only control 2 to 4 inch tall weeds.
So that's why right now you may see farmers in your area out trying to control weeds, and you think, why are they doing that now? Especially in the upper Midwest, we've got frost right around the corner, and winter, well, if any weed survives until we get to that, it's going to be dead. But you are mistaken if you're talking about winter annual weeds or looking at winter annual weeds, because they can handle that frost, they can handle the winter, and still thrive next spring.
So fortunately, on a lot of our farm, we don't have a tremendous problem with winter annual weeds, but certainly it has been more of an issue for us in no-till and strip-till, like Darren had said a little bit earlier. And since a lot of farmers across the country have reduced tillage, we are seeing more winter annual weeds popping up. So it's just one of the things that farmers have to deal with a little bit differently, and even doing a lot of spraying in the fall as opposed to in the spring to get these weeds under control permanently.
One weed that you may see out in fields right now is our Weed of the Week. Is this a winter annual, and what herbicides will control it? We'll talk about it later in the show.